with okay, if you're familiar at all with cloud operations, today most of the service providers are Amazon Web Services, Rackspace, Azure, Google Cloud, people like that. And they, the whole idea is that you can now buy computer services in the cloud and not have to maintain your own data center and all that. Now, Microsoft was doing this more as a private cloud. They had their own data centers. They were huge, but they were still run as hardware. They weren't virtual. And so what they did is they moved all that stuff, they literally migrated 7 million people within about 3 months, which was crazy, but they moved them all from their hardware, dedicated servers, and moved it into Azure. And we were no longer needed. So most of us were laid off. And I said, oh, okay, no problem. Everybody else has got to be still doing it the way Microsoft was. Well, no, everybody's now in the process of moving it. And so I recognized I needed to update my skills. And I heard about Neelish's course. I checked out Bellevue College and what they had. And the person actually teaching the courses just doesn't have the same kind of knowledge that Neelish has. So anyhow, that's where we start. So, you know, there's really several things that you have to understand about cloud computing. Now, before I came into this, I knew about, you know, software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and things like that, but never quite the way that Neelish covers it in these courses. And basically, he has a 3 courses that he calls the boot camp, and really this is what you need to get a good understanding of what current cloud technologies are. And you know, we probably don't have to go into this in real detail, but teaches you the technologies, who the vendors are, so you understand who Amazon or AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, you understand who that is, Azure, you understand Google and all that. In this also, you understand the very definitions of what platform as a service really means. And what you'll see is you'll see it PaaS, or you'll see it IaaS, or you'll see it as SaaS. Those all refer to software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. And they're also now, in fact, the other day I saw Honeywell had a job open, and it's been open for like 105 days, which is crazy. But they're now doing the IoT, Internet of Things, which in this case, which is crazy, but in this case, they're working on you know how they have all their interior heater controls and all that?
Mm-hmm.
They want to put all this stuff now in the cloud. You know, and I've been actually running one of the technologies that are part of this is the X10 technologies. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically it's home control. I've been doing that for the last 20 years. So, you know, that was kind of exciting. But anyhow, the other thing, and this is probably most important, the cloud DevOps, that is actually where you're managing, learning how to manage and deploy cloud operations. That is really probably the most important part. And then this here, well, this is also important. This is architecture and design. And we learned some things. In fact, this last session was really cool. You know, and what's cool about DevOps is, if you're familiar at all with the data center, in the past, the data center has always been focused around, do I got the right hardware? Do I have big enough hardware? You know, and how do I fix it when it breaks and all this kind of stuff. DevOps actually turns that into a software process, because you're now deploying virtual servers, okay? Now you actually write code to deploy that. What's cool about it, and Neelish really puts this well, you can now, when you're doing hardware deployment, in a data center, you spend time, you run your tests to make sure the hardware is working correctly. You know, it's a very intensive thing. When you deploy servers in a cloud environment, they're cows. You don't care. If it doesn't work, you destroy it and you start over again. You don't treat them like pets. You treat them like commodities. And that's a big realization, because now instead of taking 3 or 4 hours to deploy a piece of hardware, it takes you 5 minutes and one execution of one line of code. So those are the kind of things you'll learn in the DevOps part. Now, like I said, this earlier part of this week, we started talking about Docker and containers. So instead of now deploying an actual server that has all this stuff you don't need, now you deploy an application within a container that sits on top of a Docker's platform. It's even faster. You don't have to deploy all this stuff. Now you just deploy an image. So anyhow, it's really cool, and I think long term it's going to be very helpful.